everyone, today I'm starting a new review of this palette. Oh my golly gosh, of this palette. So What's Up Beauty did reach out to me a few weeks ago and they showed me this palette and I was like, oh, it is gorgeous. So even though I'd never really delved into the brand or known much about them previously, I am very excited to try this palette because it's not only, I just like the theme. I think I'm a little bit of a sort of fantasy nerd at heart when I have time. And I just think it's really beautiful and the color story is beautiful as well. So there's some multi-chromes in there. There's some really wearable shades, some nice sort of complementary pops of color, but also really fun texture in there, which is what I like. I like a bit of texture and sort of I don't know, dimension on the eye. So this palette has already launched. It is $45 US and 71 Australian dollars. Some of the claims of this palette is that it's made in Italy, it's talc-free, clean and cruelty-free. I don't like the clean claim, but the other ones I do like. So yeah, I can't wait to try this brand for the first time. They were also kind enough to send me a whole bunch of eyeshadow brushes. So I'm going to open these up and show them to you and use a few of them. And also their mascara, which is the Watch Me mascara, which I'm keen to try. So I'm going to be using all of these today. I'm going to swatch the palette, demo it on my eyes, and then check back in with a few looks. I'm thinking maybe 3 or 4. And then I'll conclude what I think about this palette. I just want to jump in and give a little bit more information because I do have an information card that I didn't read through before. Sneak peek, this is the look I'm going to be creating for you. Essentially, this palette has 7 blinding multi-chromes and duochromes, each containing different shades of green or shifts to green. So the whole theme about this palette, Dragon Eye, green, which I like greens. They also say they're using a new formula designed to bring out more chrome sparkle with no fallout during application. Great for your lid or inner corner. Before I swatch the palette, I wanted to show the brushes. So there's 12 brushes here and they have like a whole variety. They are numbered, so like R106, for example. On the box, they do have the name. So if you want to know what this is a pencil brush, for example, it will say it on the box. These brushes are either goat hair or a goat and synthetic blend, so just be aware if you are vegan, but they feel very nice. I love the bright pink. There's a whole bunch of shapes to choose from. My commonly used shapes for a packing brush is this sort of one or this sort of one, so these are ones I tend to use a lot. And then I quite like a medium or small sort of blending brush. They're the ones I use often, as well as sort of these pencil brushes for the lower lash line or inner corner. So they're my most used brushes, but you do have sort of domed brushes, smaller brushes. These are really good for eyeliner or using eyeshadow as an eyeliner. So they have a nice variety of brushes. Time for swatching. And what I'm actually going to do is go down like that when I'm swatching because I feel like these have nice little quads, so I sort of want to keep those together when I am swatching them. So first time touching these, they feel like the shimmers do feel quite soft, so you don't want to scrub a hard brush in them too much, but the mattes do feel very finely milled, so they feel very, very nice and smooth. So first shade is Fly with this, which is like an iridescent. It looks like it's got no base color to it, but it's got this beautiful sort of iridescent white. In some, it looks almost turquoise in some lights. It looks almost champagne in others. I'll try to have a look from different camera angles after I've swatched them all, but that one does have a shift to it. Then we have Creature, which is your standard sort of rosy brown. Then we have Breath, which is more of a peachy pink. Just going to build that one up slightly. So these are very nice and soft. Fierce is a beautiful green. In some angles, it looks like a grass green. In other angles, it looks a bit almost like sea green with a bit of blue. It does almost look like a bit of a flaky formula. So it's not super metallic. It looks like it's made up of sort of little sheets of sparkle, I suppose, but again, I'll show you in different lighting soon. Next one is Fire. This reminds me of, I'm just going to build this up a tiny bit. Is it a MAC pigment? Almost like a blue-brown pigment. It's got that reddy sort of base, not quite MAC. Oh, there was one that was similar to it. I think Makeup Geek had one as well. It's that reddy sort of brown base, and then it's got this sort of turquoisey. In some lights it looks grass green, other lights it looks more blue, sort of shift to it. So it's a pretty common multi-chrome that's been around for a while. That sort of pigment's been around for quite some time. Scales is, it's got a darker, wow, that looks very different on camera to what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a vibrant purple. What you're seeing is like a blackened base with like an aqua sort of color. Look at that black base. So you see the difference. That's got no color base. That's got a strong black base. That's got a brown base. That's got like a blue base. But I will have to show you in my angle because this is really vibrant purple, which is very cool. Spikes is sort of like a mauvey, soft mauvey color. Myth, this one's going to be interesting. Again, this is one of those flakier formulas, so it feels like there's not much base color to it. It's just this sort of flaky shimmer. I might build that up a little bit. I am being quite soft when I'm picking these up because I don't want to disrupt the pan too much, but it does sort of layer. This looks almost like a gold to pink shift. So this one does catch the light really nicely, and you can see that sort of pink flash, and I can see like a gold in my angle, but you can definitely see it looks a little bit patchier. It's not a metallic shade. It's again one of those sort of flakier formulas. Magic is a dark, it's sort of like a plummy purple. Very pretty. It looks warmer on camera than it does in person. In person, this looks a little bit more neutral, whereas it looks a lot more sort of plummy, eggplanty on camera. I actually love this color because it deepens browns, it deepens sort of reddy tones, orange tones, purpley pinky tones. It's a really good one. Blue tones, really nice way to add a bit of depth without like muting down the color too much. Smoke is a dark chocolate brown, so it's almost like a dark cocoa. Ooh, really pigmented. Powerful. This is beautiful. This is sort of like a pinky base. You can see a lot more pink than I can. It catches a bit of teal. In my angle, it's catching purple. This is a lot more metallic and smoother than some of these more flaky ones. So there's a difference in texture. And then the last one is Monster, which is sort of like a gray purple in my angle. You can sort of see grey purple in your angle as well. I can see sort of flakes of pink in there as well. What I might do before I change the camera angle is just swatch these a little bit more boldly, because these feel like they're a little bit more built up. It might have just been the looseness of the product in the pan, but I sort of want them to look fairly similar so you can see the texture differences. All right, I've just put another layer on the shimmers alone, and one thing I've noticed is this one is quite flaky and that one is quite flaky. So they are a different formula. These two are similar to this sort of formula where it is a bit more metallic, but you do have a range of different textures here, which I do very much appreciate. All right, that's just slightly different lighting, slightly different angle. Some that I want to point out with the mirror. So if I hold up the light there, you can see that that first one looks sort of unassuming, but when you do catch the light, it looks very bright and blue, which is really interesting. This one here, you can see it almost looks completely different in the mirror. It's got this purple vibrance to it. You can see the shift happen in the mirror there, which is cool. This one, again, looks much more vibrant and gold when it catches the light. And that one looks a little bit cooler. That one looks a little bit more pink, not too much. There we go. So that looks a bit different. It's sort of hard to catch, but that one is a lot more purple from the side. This one is a lot more blue, and you can just see that there is a bit of a color shift going on, which is cool to see. All right, time to prep the eye. I'm just using my Hindash. This is the Canvas Color Fluid Ultra Matte. I just want to sort of have something obviously to blank out the eye a little bit. I also had a little bit of makeup on earlier today, so I washed that off, but any leftover I want sort of gone. I'm going to use the R104. I'm not sure what this brush is called, just to blend this out a little bit. It's one of the bigger sort of blending brushes. I'll have everything I use in the description box. I think the color that keeps catching my eye is this one here. So in some angles it sort of looks a little bit sort of greeny teal. Other angles it looks, I wonder if I can get it. It's not showing it very well, but it kind of looks very vibrant purple. So that one I want to sort of use. I might also use some of these up here. And we'll see where we go. All right, to apply that, I'm using the R110, and I'm just going to pat that on. It is very twinkly and gives this beautiful sort of purple, slight purple sort of base to the eye, and then this turquoise shimmer. Now that type of pigmentation is what I'll just use on a daily basis, what I call an everyday sparkle. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's really brightening. I love it. I think this is totally something that would almost be like a one and done eyeshadow, where I just put that on, put a bit of mascara, and off you go. It also looks a lot more complicated than it actually is, because again, it sort of looks like you've got a crease color in there, and then the light is catching that sort of cooler tone. It's very pretty. That's definitely a me eyeshadow on a daily basis, but I want this to be a little bit more grand than that, even though that is fun. So what I'm going to do is I might go in with some mattes first, and I might build on top of that. So I've just picked up a little bit of spikes on an R105, and I'm just sort of blending the matte just slowly. This is a very soft matte, so it blends quite nicely, but there is a little bit of kick up in the pan. Not much, but if you were to sort of pack this on without tapping your brush, there might be a little bit of fallout on your face. Am I even in focus? Probably not. Who knows? But the formula is very nice and blendable. I love a matte that can blend and build. I don't need sort of instant pigmentation. So I want to start fairly slow and then build up. What I sort of want to do with this look, I think, is create almost like a semi-rainbow effect. So I'm going in with Scales, which is that sort of dark base green. Now I'm exclusively putting this in the outer corner because of the really dark base. And you can see it just adds a bit of a beautiful green effect there. On the inner corner, I'm going in with the shade Myth. This is one of those sort of flakier ones, so it actually is a bit harder to pick up on the brush, but it does give, you can barely see it in compared to the other one, but it does give a sort of more pinky, twinkly effect to the inner corner. Probably getting a bit lost in what I've got going on, but definitely a more pink element. I want more green, so I'm going in with Fierce, which is the grass green. Do I want it there? No, I want it here. I don't know what am I doing? I feel like I don't know. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. Just to add a bit more oomph. All right, I feel like this is a bit of a hodgepodge. I don't know what's happening. I think this would also benefit from like a grungy green color, like an olive green, but I'm going to go in again with this shade, and then I'm actually going to add in that plum just to sort of finish off the look. I feel like I'm overloading it to a point where the multi-chromes are no longer sort of, I don't know, highlighted because there's so much going on. But I do really like, I think the look is pretty, and I really like these soft, really blendable mattes. I think they're a really nice formula. I'm using the R102, and I'm going back in again with that dark purple. So this is Magic, just to sort of intensify a little bit. And a big clean fluffy brush. This is the R103, just to sort of blend that out a little bit. Now, one thing I've noticed is there's very little fallout, and if there is fallout, it seems to be with the mattes if you don't tap them off because they're quite soft. The glitter, there's not too much fallout, like there's none on my face, but there is a bit of migrating. So I find that in here where I sort of was packing on that Myth shade, that sort of flaky pinky shade, there's a bit of sort of dispersing, but it's not on the tops of my cheekbones or anything. It's just sort of where the brush has put it or blended it out. Okay, we're stepping away from the eyeshadow. I love this color combination, that sort of plummy mauvey purple with a greeny sort of element. I think it's such a beautiful combination. I think it really suits brown eyes, which I have, so I'm happy. But now I'm going to go in with the mascara. Now this is the Watch Me mascara. This is really interesting. It's got two sides to it. One is that conventional sort of bristle side and one is the rubber bristle side. Now the instructions do say to use that sort of brush conventional side first, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to brush it through. And then switch over to the sort of spiky rubber bristle side this is very well weighted. This packaging is very substantial. It feels very nicely weighted. So yeah, switch over to the other side to then add more, what do they say? To help define, curl, and add length. So I'm switching over to that side now. Definitely adds a lot of volume. I'm just going to use the conventional side. I'm not re-dipping it, and I'm just doing my lower lashes just slightly with that. So that's the final look. The lashes are definitely quite prominent. That's literally one coat. Well, I switched the brush around, so is that 2 coats? I'm not too sure. The instructions do say to immediately turn over the brush to the silicone side, which I didn't do. I did one side, then the other side, and then switched over. So that's sort of more like doing 2 coats. And to be fair, I think it looks a little bit overloaded, so maybe I didn't switch it fast enough. I do like the length and the volume it gives, but I do find it looks a little bit heavy. So what I might do over my next couple of looks is still keep using this mascara and let you know more about it. So yeah, very pretty look, and I look forward to creating more looks with this palette. All right, so I'm wearing this palette. It's actually the 3rd day I'm wearing this palette. Yesterday I wore the shade Fly, which, this lighting is horrible. I wore that shade just over a sort of brown cream base, and it actually looked very green. So this over a brown base, you can see the green shift. So it was looking very green. This is looking very, still not so very white, whatever. So it does sort of change or emphasize different colors based on what you apply it over. All right, this is the base I put it over, and let's see if it actually looks different in this lighting. I'm not sure if you can see, but see how it's picking up sort of more green? So that's it on directly on skin, and that's it over a sort of more brown primer, which is very interesting. It's the same thing. Let's just build it up a tiny bit. There you go. So they do sort of color morph a little bit. Now today I've gone a sort of simple eye. I'm hoping you can see it because the lighting is quite bright. But essentially what I've done is I've taken the shade Breath, which is a coral. So again, direct sunlight, it's not the best. I've taken that shade in the crease, and then I've taken this shade here, which is sort of like a gold that has a shift to green and a bit of pink. I put that all over the lid. So hopefully you can see it here. So it looks very sort of yellow gold, sort of old gold green twinkly. I've got that coral that I've sort of blended it out with and put on the lower lash line. And I've also taken the shade Smoke, which is the dark brown, and just use it as a little bit of a liner. I do want to say it was very hard to make the matte stick over the shimmer because the shimmer just wants to take over. So I feel like what I did actually put the coral over the shimmer in the corner. You can see when it's not catching the light, you can see the coral, but as soon as the light catches the eyeshadow, the shimmer comes through. So the mattes sort of, they don't compete, but I feel like the shimmers overtake the mattes. I did tap the shimmer on with my finger a little bit just to build up the color. Otherwise it looked quite dispersed. So it did actually look quite sparkly and sort of twinkly, whereas if you want to build up the color, you do sort of have to go in with your finger a little bit. It does pick up nicely on the finger, and sort of just tap on where you want it more intense. But I think this combination is really nice. It sort of has this sort of almost duochrome peach to gold sort of effect. All right, look number 3, and I'm going for something a little bit more subtle today, simply because I'm working and I feel like I've got a headache and blah, blah, blah. And it's just one of those days. So what I'm using today is I'm using this pink shade. I thought it sort of works with the colors that I've got going on. I'm wearing this sort of pink and lime check shirt. So I thought I'd use this one, and then I used this brown just to softly blend it out and also put on my lower lash line. I used a brown eyeliner just in the outer corner and a bit of mascara, and I thought I'd make a very simple look. Now, what I did do differently today was I used a glitter glue as my primer. So this is the NYX glitter primer, which is very, very sticky, and it really makes shimmers and glitters like really stick to your eye, so it makes things look a lot more bold. So this is the shade here. So it's pink, and it does have like a gold shift to it, so you can see how it sort of shifts gold, and in the mirror it's that one there. So it is a beautiful sort of duochrome color. Now, when I applied it on the glitter glue, it looks super intense and very, very metallic and very foiled. I don't feel like you can see it very well in the lighting at the moment, but it is stunning and applied so easily over glitter glue. Now, I want to show you the difference. Oops. I've got glitter glue on this side of my hand, so if you put it on, it's very, very bold, whereas if you put it on just without it, it can actually look a little bit more patchy. So this one was one of those shades that you can get that sort of flaky, twinkly effect, but if you want it more bold, like even if I'm rubbing this off now, it just looks super metallic. So the right sort of base can make this look so different. All right, hopefully this is better lighting to see how beautiful and twinkly this is. So you can see it's that sort of foiled effect, but it gives a pink look, but then if you do move, you can see the gold. So it is like Stylishly Mary from MAC, just sort of more foiled and a little bit more bold, but it's very pretty. So this is my next look. I decided to lean into a sort of soft green effect. I'm just using two shimmers. So I'm using this one in the inner corner, and I'm using this sort of grass green color, which does sort of, you can see in the mirror, it does have like a minty, more bluey green shift to it, but front on it looks more like a goldy green. So what I did, and I'll zoom in so you can see it properly, I sort of used this as like diffused in the inner corner so you can see how twinkly it can be, and then I sort of packed this on just with my finger and blended it out, and then in the middle I just used a face powder. So this palette doesn't have any light mattes, so I just used a face powder, and I just set sort of the primer that I had just to sort of break up the two shades, but I sort of like this look. It's very soft, it's like almost minty. All right, so this is the look. So you can see in the outer corner, I'll try to turn down the brightness a bit, you've got the sort of like the bold green, which is a really nice, it's definitely a bold green, but as a sort of accent, it's very pretty. And then I have that diffused sort of white color that does catch a light, a little bit minty, so you can see you get sort of different effects. This is that diffused sort of sparkle, and this is more of that built up metallic, and then in between I have that matte, which is partly because of my primer being that sort of color, and then also setting it with a face powder. So I think it's a very pretty look. I think it's a bit light for me. It's not, I don't really like minty. I think it makes my eyes look puffier, so I might amend this throughout the day, but it was fun playing with them, and I think they do create a nice, soft, beautiful effect. I might actually take Creature, which is that matte brown color, and just sort of deepen that up a little bit. Don't know if you can see the difference there, but all of a sudden this to me looks a little bit more normal. It makes my eye look higher and this one look lower. I don't know what that's, does that look like that to you? There, I tweaked it with a bit more of that brown. I think to me that looks a little bit more cohesive with my coloring, but at least you could see it both ways. All right, I'm back with my final look, and I am wearing a mermaidy sort of vibey look. So I'm using mainly this shade and that shade. This one looks like it looks very light and bright at the moment, and this one obviously looks very green, but this one does have a very blackened base, and this one has quite a darker base too. So they are the darkest shimmer shades in the palette. So I do find them harder to work with because darker shades, I don't tend to vibe with really dark eyeshadows, but they are beautiful. So what I really like about the two of them is that this one actually has a purple shift to it. So hopefully you can see in the mirror, it's out of focus, but it does shift to purple. So it actually does transition really nicely to that color. So that's what essentially I've done. So purple on the outer corner, that green on the inner corner. I've blended it out just so you can see with this shade here softly. And then on my lower lash line and inner corner, I've added a little bit more twinkle by using this color here, which is very sparkly. This one is more metallic, this one is more sparkly. I love this color. I think it's gorgeous. So I really like this effect. It's, again, not something I would wear on a daily basis, but I think they work really nicely, and it's very impactful, and it's very sort of, it gives this vibe. Definitely gives this vibe. So I've been using all these products now for about a week now, or just over a week, and I do have thoughts. I'm actually going to start with what I think about these, because it's just a little bit easier to articulate, and then I'll go into a little bit more depth about the palette. Firstly, I really love the brushes. Like, if you're okay with animal hair, these are really soft. All of my brushes are dirty because I've been using them all week. They're very nice, they're very soft, the shapes are really useful. I really like the brushes. They're really lovely. The Watch Me mascara, I'm a little bit on the fence with. I like the effect of it, but the way it's sort of described, where you start with one side of the brush and you switch over to the other, to me, that always left quite a heavy effect on my lashes. And because my lashes can droop down a little bit, if I've got too much product on them, it doesn't look great. So I just found that I would use a different side based on either the effect I was after or where I was applying it. So for example, I might use the sort of spiky side to do the top lashes and then switch over to the more traditional brush side to do my lower lashes. I found that worked really well. The traditional brush side left a more sort of wispy effect, whereas the spiky side did build them up a little bit more, but the combination of the two I found to be a little bit heavy. It might also be that this formula at the moment, since it's only been opened for a week, it might be quite wet. I do find that often mascaras get better over a few weeks of using them because they dry out a little bit, and you don't sort of have that heavy effect. So I might change my mind on this, but at the moment I like it. I'm just not crazy for it. So onto the palette. So I love the look of this palette. I think the brand has done such great things when it comes to packaging the product. The packaging is really nice, high quality. The feel and the look, it's just very special, and the theme is very fun. When it comes to the nitty gritty, the stuff inside, I think there are some really great shades, and then there are some shades that I don't quite understand what they're doing here. I sort of feel like what they've done is they've gone for like cooler toned here and sort of more deeper sparkly shades, and then here is sort of warmer shades that maybe is a little bit more everyday wearable, but I feel like it seems a little bit disjointed in this palette for me personally. I much preferred that side of it. So the purples, even this green that I'm not going to wear too often, but it applied really nicely. I much prefer this side of it because I feel like it represents the concept a lot more. And I just feel like it was a little bit more special. There were also some shimmers that were quite flaky. So I think it was this one, maybe that one were quite flaky. And I found those to be a little bit harder to work with. You really do need a sticky base if you want it to apply boldly, but they do look gorgeous once you do use like a glitter glue, for example. Another thing I was a bit confused about when it came to this sort of half of the palette, I like this light brown. It was quite a rosy brown, so it did work really nicely. I honestly, you could have swapped this one to there and just made it a smaller palette, maybe even that, and I would have been happy. This sort of area, it felt very disjointed. In terms of the colors as well, it was a bit confusing because all the shimmers have some green element to it, but you'll see there's actually no green matte to enhance that, if that makes sense. So if I wanted to really lean into a green, whether it be this grass green, whether it be this sort of emerald green, there are no really crease color matte shades that enhance it. And the purples do work nicely with this one, but not as nicely with that one. Yes, you can go brown, but one thing I don't like is that when you get greens, right, and then you get these sort of more rosy toned mattes, if you do actually mix them together, so green and green, and then if you blend in, say, this peachy shade, what does it turn it? Sort of brownish. Blend in a brown with this one. What does it turn it? brownish because they're actually sort of opposite colors. So these are more sort of red based, and then you've got the shimmers that are green based. And if you know the color wheel, they're opposite colors, so they neutralize each other. They just sort of turn brown. So for a palette that boasts sort of like all the shimmers having some green reflect, even this light one does have a green reflect to it on certain bases. You just don't have the appropriate matte to really enhance that. So I found it a little bit disjointed. If they did actually commit to the sort of purple and green theme and fleshed it out a little bit more so the mattes and shimmers weren't competing, this would have been the perfect brown-eyed sort of hazel eye palette, because the greens and the purples really enhance brown eyes. And this could have been a series. They could have called it Dragon Eyes Brown, edition. And then they could have had one for blue eyes and green eyes. And they could have just, instead of trying to please everyone, they could have really carved out a particular niche and made the color of the dragon sort of, I'm thinking blue eyes, you have more like oranges and reds and sort of, that kind of coppery color in the dragon. So I think that could have been really cool, but as it is, it feels like it's trying to please too many people, but it doesn't really work cohesively together. And I've had that complaint a lot with like Anastasia Beverly Hills. They have their own color story when it comes to the shimmers, but then the mattes have a different color story. And I sort of felt the same when it came to this palette. In terms of the formula, again, there were some that were really lovely, and then there were some that were a little bit harder to work with. So I did talk about, I think it was like, sort of like these two shades, and maybe this one being more of a flakier formula. So instead of it actually being quite smooth, it actually did look a little bit like dispersed and a little bit flaky. Now you can get a beautiful effect if you apply it over a glitter glue to get a more bold effect. But what was limiting was that these sort of more nudie shades that you might wear as a wash of color all over the lid, it was harder to do that because they were a little bit patchier, if that makes sense. So you either wear them really intensely, you wear them layered over something, but on its own, they were a little bit harder to make work and look smooth and flattering. So again, that was a bit of a limitation. I think my favorite shades was definitely this one because it's very twinkly. It's this beautiful sort of blue to purple taupey kind of shimmer, which is really pretty. I also really like this green. It's gorgeous. I like the purples, and even this dark purple is a really nice performing shade. So I really like the concept of this, and I almost feel like the packaging and the concept and the marketing and the images sort of built up this hype that I don't think the palette completely meets. I think it could have, with a tweak of a few colors. This could have been like the jewel tone palette of people's dreams, but I feel like it wasn't quite there. So yeah, I like this palette, but I'm not obsessed with it. But I am really curious to see what comes next from What's Up Beauty, because I feel like they've got some really cool ideas. I just want them to trust themselves a little bit more and really lean into them, because you can always add to the collections and bring out volume 1, 2, and 3 to please everyone and all color stories. But I think this packaging and the concept, I don't feel like this delivered as much. Like, imagine having like a really emerald matte green here. It just would have added something that this is like promising, but a coral doesn't deliver. I don't know, there's something about it, but it is beautiful. It is pretty. So thank you to What's Up Beauty for sending me the palette, the brushes, and the mascara. I've had a lot of fun using it. I will link them down below if you want to check them out. And let me know if you've tried this or anything else by the brand. What are your thoughts? And I want to give a big shout out to my members for supporting my channel, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.